All righty. Well, hey, that I think maybe now is as good of a time as any to get going. Thank you for joining us, everyone. My name's Jay Spilinga. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the current interim president here with the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition and also with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. But I have the privilege to welcome our presenters today from the Grand Rapids Community Collaboration on Climate Change. Really exciting group that I think we can learn a lot from. And the Grand Rapids Community Collaboration on Climate Change has community ambassadors. And so those community ambassadors are going to be presenting to us today. And these C4, we for short call the Community Collaboration on Climate Change C4, is these ambassadors serve both virtually and in person to promote the collective work of C4, and they have meaningful ties in their neighborhoods and are energized by working with and organizing people. So we have 4 of their ambassadors here today, and I'll give some brief introductions and then I'll pass it over to them to run their presentation today. And we'll have a presentation for about the first 35 or 40 minutes. And then we will do question and answer at the end. So if you want to hold your questions, that'd be great. And if you're not speaking, if you could also put yourself on mute, that would be great. So our first Grand Rapids Community Collaboration on Climate Change ambassador is Saida. Saida is a Grand Rapids native who graduated from the University of Michigan with a BA in political science, and their purpose and practice is organizing for equity and change with their community and tapping into art as a part of the vision for change. They're currently an education justice organizer centering student, parent, and caregiver power. Saida is energized to strategize and move action around environmental justice with Grand Rapids neighbors. And there is so much potential to reimagine climate justice, our green spaces, our lifestyles, and our standards to implement new visions is Saida's vision. So, and then our next, our second ambassador is Journey. And Journey was born in Saginaw, Michigan, and became a resident of Grand Rapids a decade ago. They have grown to love the city of Grand Rapids and all it offers, and they are the creator of Saul's Sessions, which are poetic performances and open mic pop-up events, and also have been crafting collaborations throughout the culture community to come together through spoken word, art, music, and so that we can make a change that will improve the environment and the future. Journey wanted to become part of the Community Collaboration on Climate Change so they could work closely with residents of the inner city to learn specifics of what our community needs to move forward and make Grand Rapids a model for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and climate justice for its residents. Journey values culture, community connections, and their vision of the future is to heal and help the generations grow to their fullest potential. Our next ambassador is Ryan Nichols, who identifies as a disabled adult, has a unique perspective being wheelchair bound. She shared with me this quote, in my lifetime, I can see the changes in the climate with my own eyes. Worse, when there are extreme weather events intensified by climate change, I see how the disabled community suffers more than others. I want to bring climate justice to the disabled community in Grand Rapids. So thank you for being here, Ryan. Really appreciate it. And then our final presenter for our final ambassador is Felicia, who is a single mother of 5 grown children with 16 grandchildren and who raised their kids in the southeast side of Grand Rapids. Felicia has always been a working single parent and has seen the weather change over the years and believes in climate change. Also, their family has suffered environmental problems. Some of their children have had lead poisoning and suffered from the effects of it. Felicia doesn't want to see that happen to any other children. And when they joined C4, they learned about the intersection of climate justice and environmental justice. And Felicia had asked for help for their family in the past and was told, no, we can't help you. So Felicia didn't realize that so many were facing injustice, and now they are here to do something about these issues in Grand Rapids. So thank you so much to the community ambassadors for joining us today and presenting. And with that, I can pass it over to Saida to start with our presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the introductions, Jace. And thank you all for taking the time to be here, but also for all the action and systemic change that we're pushing to do within climate change and climate justice. So just taking a moment of appreciation for organizations like these that really center that, but also center and mobilizing around those issues. We know that we cannot create systemic change or any sort of change without our communities, without mass numbers. And so we just want to introduce kind of what C4 is, how it came about, our values, kind of our vision, and then what is the call to action, what that looks like. And I do want to take a moment of appreciation. This meeting is already part of the action, informing ourselves of the type of work that C4 is doing, and also further collaborating on some of these initiatives together for the action. So already you're being part of what's going on with climate justice. So I'll give it over to Ryan. She'll be doing some land acknowledgement. We're going to be doing some current events with Felicia, then talking about the problems and solutions and the values. And then Journey will be going into the vision statement in our 3-year plan. Ryan will be talking about the what's new, why now is the time to create this change. And then Felicia will be going into the C4 planning team and facilitation. And lastly, we're going to talk about who's involved, our steering council / leadership, going more into who we are as C4 ambassadors, then talking about what is the call to action. So what is the promise, the process, and what can Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition do to be really part of this? And then around 12:40, maybe 12:45, we're going to be doing some Q&As. So that'll be, you can ask any of the ambassadors any questions that you may still have at the end of the presentation. So I'll pass it over to Ryan and move on to the next slide.
Hello, everyone. I would like to do the land acknowledgement now, where we like to take time to recognize whose land we are on right now in Grand Rapids and hold a space for gratitude for them. We'd like to acknowledge that we are here on the beautiful ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe people, the people of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, oh no, I always stumble over these names and I apologize. The Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and I know this has a new pronouncement now. It's not Potawatomi anymore, it's Potawatomi. And we recognize the sovereignty of Michigan's indigenous nations and historic communities, both those who live here now and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. We want to express gratitude and appreciation to the indigenous peoples across the continent who have been living and caring for this land from time immemorial, who are still here and will always continue to be present in this place. And Felicia.
Okay, in the current event, I think this is what you're looking for, Saida, is and how it relates to C4 is like one of our first things, we had a launch, what do you call it, a launch event to let the community know what we're doing and what we're all about. We would like to see zero waste, see the landfills and things cleaned up. Let's see, more plants that are, would you say indigenous to Michigan, and let's see, what was it, the less of the poisonous gases and things in the air. And so that's most, some of the things we're working on, and we're all working in our own communities because we all have ties to our different communities to see these things done. And so we're going to go out into our communities, see what needs to be done, and start there with getting, neighbors involved and businesses, and to clean things up and make it better for those that will come after us.
Yeah, thanks for that, Felicia. And I also kind of want to further extend on this, like for current events. These are events that we know that are still happening in a lot of different just spaces and in different sort of engagements. And so we want to recognize that C4 really wants to center BIPOC leadership and power decision making. And as we know that BIPOC are the most Black, Indigenous, and people of color are the most impacted by climate injustices. And so we want to recognize that we are engaged in Black Lives Matter and Movimiento Cosecha movements, understanding the intersectionality with the environmental initiatives that we're having. We are also really looking forward towards really changing the extractive systems and eliminating them. Also being able to explore new solutions that recognize the full humanity of our community members, but also of the work that we're doing. And also we recognize COVID-19 is still happening. We understand the highlighted disparities within the healthcare and economic stability. So we know that this is even further worsened by climate change events. And we just want to hold space to recognize these different things that are happening and that do intersect with the work that we're doing. Understanding that by recognizing and taking action to further mitigate these inequities is really important to this work. So that leads on to our next one, the problems. So kind of talking about the problems and the proposed solutions and how C4 was born out of that. So some of the problems that what prompted C4's emergence is that we understand that the first step to change is naming that climate injustices disproportionately impacts people of color the most, even though we're the ones who least contribute to the cause. So it's really important to support BIPOC leadership, honor that knowledge, that action, that history, that vision, and really bring it into the initiatives that are happening around climate justice. So really centering folks to be the ones who are making these decisions and actions. So on a local level, this means that we're creating a solid and stable infrastructure to challenge systemic barriers necessary to make these bold changes for a climate future. We also know that there has to be more awareness and understanding and action for really diverse and equitable decision-making. Climate change can feel like a really big subject. So how do we really see how that funnels down into individuals on a local level, but also what that means for our collective, the call and action for our collective community. And there's a couple of other ones as well, like understanding that we need both short-term, intermediate, and long-term wins / planning. Yeah, I'm in a coffee shop, not a bar. So you might be hearing some background noise. Let me know if it's too loud though. So these are some of the problems that we recognized, but it really led to prompting solutions. So what does it look like to start responding to some of these things and really creating space and movement around it and power building? So it led to the solutions here. Some of these solutions really move like providing resources directly to community and members and advocates of color. We know that our community members, our neighbors are facing this every single day. How do we empower them with the right tools, with the right connections, with the right like funds to be able to do this work? And really identify how people are being impacted at a local level. We also want to redefine the values and resources. So making sure we have transformational relationships with each other and not transactional. Sometimes folks go to a climate advisory board and you give your opinion and you share either trauma or you share things that you need and you open up, and sometimes you don't get a response. How do we change that sort of culture and really create something that prompts action and conversation? So a big part of that is networking. We all know the importance of networking, not only in relationship building, but also knowing who's doing what. How do we not duplicate things that are happening, but how do we make sure that the initiatives that are happening are equitable and including the folks that are most impacted? Another one is really bringing up the urgency and systemic needs of this, knowing that fear mongering doesn't enable folks to be mobilized, but rather it's like, how do we get folks agitated but serious and empowered to create this change? And the last one is increased awareness and understanding of climate change, diversity, equity, inclusion, and climate justice. So a lot of big couple things that we're addressing, but still very important. And then that leads to our next one, to what values. So we don't just want to have this document, we want to make it a moral document. What are the values of how C4 ambassadors, how our leadership team, how founding members want to guide this work? What are fundamental values leading this? And so just kind of reading a few is like shared leadership, really enabling BIPOC leaders that are doing this work, honoring and supporting agency as C4 ambassadors. How do we lead projects that are that honor our identities and our communities and our culture? Dismantling barriers to access, understanding that sometimes we have a lot of unnecessary steps to be able to voice our concerns, or we don't always get a callback or a response when we are voicing things. How do we really honor these community inputs and changes that we want to see? Challenging the status quo. What is the culture of Grand Rapids or even the Midwest? Like challenging Midwest nice. What does it mean to have transparent and honest conversations that will lead to change that support all involved in this community, all involved in this conversation? Cultivating belonging and interdependence, knowing that we need each other. The work that y'all are doing with mobilizing folks, that's really important. Protecting the people and the environment and dismantling justice. So throughout the rest of the slides, you'll kind of see how these are incorporated into the processes and our leadership team and along with other things as well. So I'm going to pan it over to Journey, who's going to talk about our vision statement and our 3-year plan. So how is all this being implemented? Okay.
So it says Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, and historically and build new systems to address climate change centered in human well-being, the interconnectedness and of life and access to shared leadership. The 3-year pilot plan was made by C4 as a pilot to bring more people into the group and get to be in a community environment. In 2021, we found our project coordinator, Ned Andre. They launched their leadership team. They started contract ambassadors and collaborative partners. They put in many resources and created awesome communication strategies. And they started to develop their website. In 2022, they support cohort campaigns in our many
Journey, sorry, you're like cutting in and out just a little bit right now. Could you repeat the 2022 one?
and they launched a grant proposal, which helped us support our platform. In 2022, support cohort campaign. Hello?
Yes.
Like we lost you near the end. So we didn't really hear 2022.
That's weird.
Yeah. Do you mind just starting again from 2022? You sound good right now.
Okay. Let's see. From 2022, support cohort and campaigns and mini grants. They launched a grant support platform, creating storytelling collectives. Can you not do that? It's kind of distracting me. Lead engagement for development of a community-based and climate action and adaptation plan. Was that all clear?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, on
Thanks.
to 2023. So we co-create and community climate action and adaptation plan, create a long-term sustainable plan for the CF and campaign needs with potential redevelopment.
Yeah, and kind of expanding on what Journey shared with us, something that we really want to emphasize is this pilot plan really involves having our community and different leaders that are leading climate justice to be part of this. For example, the storytelling collection on our website, we are collecting climate change stories to really understand how this is impacting folks, and understanding that this isn't impacting folks only, and not having access to air quality. This is impacting our schools. This is impacting other infrastructures where we live every single day and where we commute to as well. And so another one is just the cohort campaigns and the mini grants. We know that people need resources and money to be empowered. So that led to kind of later on, Journey will be talking about ambassadors and how that looks like for us. But right now, where we're in is that we're still doing all this stuff. We're in 2023 right now, but we're still collecting storytelling, people's climate change story. We're still collecting folks to engage in the different things that we're having. So next up, I think Ryan will be talking a little bit more.
The why something new. because we all know there's 1,000,001 climate change or climate action or climate this, that, and the other thing out there right now. And why should they start up another one? Because this one's different. Because this one's new. This one takes the power to the people. Doesn't just helicopter a little bit of money and throw it at them and say, oh, the money's gone. Well, so are we. That's not what we do. We actually go to our neighbors. Like in my building, I'm taking their ideas, like they want to do a community garden. So that's probably what we'll do, is do a community garden, get the whole building involved. And in that way, we'll bring our neighbors closer, we'll do justice to the earth, and we'll all share in the profits. And then from there, we'll decide whether we'll keep the veggies and stuff that we grow or we sell them and turn that over into more projects that do our building and our earth more good, like putting in more native plants and grasses, which will be, we have a little weird pocket of wildlife where I live, where we have deer and possum and raccoons, and it's right near a golf course. We even have bear. So, but it's really close to a main thoroughfare, 28th Street. And so it's really weird how much wildlife we have there, but it's also in the middle of a lot of traffic. And so we need to preserve that area and make sure it doesn't get run over by corporations and things like that. We have a high school next to us, which is pretty much run by the bosses. And they've actually taken out where they used to have a pool, and they've made that into all native plants and stuff that the kids are experimenting with. So I'm thinking if we can maybe get a hold of them, maybe they would want to help us too, and we can spread it out and make it go neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood and make it a bigger thing in Grand Rapids. You just start small and you make it bigger and you end up saving the world. And how does that sound? But
Yeah, I think you covered it.
I think a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, and I think something that you bring up that's really important to know is like, this doesn't have an age limit. We're looking for young people to
Oh,
really
yeah.
get involved in these initiatives. We're looking for people who have, who are older and have a lot of experience and have seen a lot of this change happen to still be involved. We're looking for all folks to be involved, but we're really centering those who are disproportionately affected and aren't the most represented. And so we want to make sure that that representation goes beyond just being like an advisory board. So we're having the systemic structure to the C4 to make sure that that power building is effective, and it's really changing also the culture of the way that decisions get made and what issues, the way they're processed. So I really liked Ryan's like example of that. I didn't know that schools were doing that, but it's just like a place for us to start to reimagine our communities and really lead into that. Anything else, Ryan?
I was going to mention the community sustainability partnership, which is on the slide. And that was a really interesting experiment they did in 2005 with the city of Grand Rapids and Aquinas College, Grand Rapids Community College, Grand Rapids Public Schools, and Grand Valley State University. They took all those, and though they didn't, they mobilized all their local resources and they developed all these organizations and neighborhoods and communities. They got an award from United Nations for Regional Center of Expertise. But there's still many places in Grand Rapids that still need help, and that's the BIPOC and disabled communities. And that's why we want to help as much as we want to help, because we're all part of those communities. I think is why we are so passionate about this. It's because we are part of these communities. And we're not just on the sidelines. I think that's all I have to say right now.
Yep. And now Felicia will be talking about kind of our planning team and the facilitation support, like what is uplifting this work as well.
Okay, and this all came through the C4 team, which they're the team of leaders. And I think it's listed here on this slide, along with us ambassadors, and they are hoping to get funding to add more ambassadors. And it's through budgets and moral documents, and it needs funding and support to be accessible, and that will come in with companies, organizations, community groups, individuals, including youth who are committed to achieving the C4's vision through the established values, community agreements, leadership team governance. And like through the schools, I work at a school, and we have, what is that? The MSU, they come in and they do things with the kids on nutrition, and they're gonna do one on how to plant a garden. That's gonna be really interesting, how to make your own little herb garden in your window, things like that, so we can learn to, be sustainable in our own lives, not always having to run to the grocery store for everything, but be able to have some, have things of your own, be able to give the kids the value of growing their own vegetables and things, which I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, so this is a list that Felicia was talking about of who is involved. You can kind of see the variety of different departments, different organizations. And then we also want to recognize the person like by name. Some of the folks are still involved as well. So I just want to say that the C4 planning team are the folks that were interested in a new equitable and participatory vision for climate justice that really centered BIPOC. And so you'll see that in this leadership team as well, like that goal of really centering the folks that are the most impacted is represented on the people who are creating these leadership decisions. And it's really important to know. And I also want to say that the C4 is an intentional within the leadership structure. So yeah, just like making sure that it really reflects BIPOC community mores. And then the next one is our steering committee. So this is a steering council. You might see them referred to as like the leadership development team. So they have meetings, and the C4 ambassadors like ourselves are also participate in that. It's a really transparent. When they come into decision making, they have a really equitable process, making sure that they get everyone's voice and kind of like weighing what that looks like. And they just continue to co-build with ambassadors on what our community needs based on conversations that they've had, that we've had, and just finding that perspective as well. So yeah, here's some of the people that are on that. So there's like Bill Wood from the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, people from the US Green Building, the West Michigan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, City of Grand Rapids, the Grand Rapids African American Task Force and Legacy and Love LLC, the Kent County Essential Needs Task Force, and then this has changed a little bit. So we do have a couple of other people that have joined later on, but this is essentially the essence of what our steering council / leadership development team looks like. And so these are just some pictures of them. Right here in the middle, you'll see Ned Andre. He's a project coordinator. So he works between like the leadership team and the ambassadors. He's really the one who's trying to keep us on track and share his knowledge with climate justice activation advocacy and leading on to that. And so this is us over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is when we went to the Michigan Environmental Justice Summit. So kind of like it was over there in Detroit, and as ambassadors we were able to travel over there. Everything was paid for, and we were able to participate in these conversations and ideate and meet new people that were experiencing climate injustice, but over there in Detroit. And then just meeting some people like that came from Grand Rapids to be part of that conversation as well. There's Ned Andre at Yes Your Dog. You'll just see like a lot of these events that are happening, just sprinkled here and there, but opportunities for folks to get involved in more. So really interactive, really like on the ground type of work. Next up, Journey will talk about the community ambassadors, kind of who we are, and then also share a little bit about our projects and the opportunity that we're leading.
Listed now, we have our C4 community ambassadors. The first one is Frederica Brown, Cynthia Bailey, Jim Nichols, Robert Sims, Leah Baker, Betsaida Valedita, DeAndre Jones, Felicia Sims, Journey Evans, Ryan Nichols, Megan Kurz, Abby Carlson, Yolanda Albridge, and Iris Gibson. On the next slide, could you go to the next slide? This is where we have our listed locations and our emails. If you would like to reach out to us to assist us or to just, get more input together. Right now, we are working on one called, and we have it centered in I think it's the Kentwood area, Southeast, where we have a collaborating church where they're going to let us plant a forest. And
That's in the Boston Square area.
Yeah. Everything's in
Kentwood,
Grand
okay.
Rapids proper.
Yeah, the Southeast, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, yep. So, is
And
there any
then-
more information?
Yeah, do you want to quickly just talk about kind of like what our main priorities are in terms of like the project and like why people have this contact info?
For each project, individual or one separate project?
No, it's just like how we're liaisons for the projects that we're implementing at a really hyper local level.
Oh, how we go over details with people or just connecting with the community? Like, I don't get what you're asking me to do.
Yeah, so yeah,
I think connecting
no
with-
worries. I was just gonna say, like, in addition to this information, the reason that
Okay.
we're providing our contact information is that, like, and as a role as our as ambassadors, we're holding like one-on-ones with our community members. We're trying to incubate new ideas, trying to like really reimagine what our spaces look like and meeting the needs of our neighbors and our communities where we're implementing these projects. So the reason why y'all see like our location is because that's where we are kind of looking to implement our hyperlocal project, because ambassadors are giving a certain amount of funding to be able to kind of address something. And it's not enough to change a lot of systemic things, but we know that we still need the additional support sometimes at the local level. And so if you find that you know anyone who lives in these areas, or if you yourself live in any areas and you're interested in sharing like an idea that you have for your community or that you've seen implemented elsewhere that you would like to bring to Grand Rapids, this is like our contact information. So that's why we're providing this like ambassador contact page.
To add to that, we are also assembling our process, which is to see, engage, and act. It's on the next slide. So it says, oh, are you gonna go or do you want me to read from it? Oh, gotcha. So C, how we perceive the world and practice self-awareness. This is how we reach out and become ambassadors ourselves. And then engage, this is how we reach out and connect with the community, how we do our one-on-ones and how we take on our climate stories. So how we show up and engage relationally, how we listen and build relationships and create strong new process time, how we decide and how we implement and learn, and how we influence with our direction and bring focus to action and engage in self-to-fail experiments. That is the process that I was talking about. I didn't know what you were asking me to do because we're gonna do it. I was just waiting on you to, press the button, but okay, gotcha.
And like Ryan brought out, these are things that we want to see continue into the future. We just don't want to do them on a temporary basis and then, then all of a sudden it's done. We want to see them.
Sorry about that. My screen was like being frozen, but here's the promise of C4.
That's me, right? it took us a long time to build trust. Well, the planning team took a long time to build trust and solid relationships. It took Ned a long time to talk us into. It didn't really take him a long time, I guess. It took him time to get us built up to think that we could actually pull this off, to where neighbors would listen to us, to where they'd want to get involved, to because a lot of the times people just they don't want to get involved because they think they're asking you to volunteer. And a lot of people can't afford to volunteer, and I understand that more than anybody. But C4 is different, where they give you a budget where you can actually pay people to work. And it might run out, but that's why we were always looking for funding, where you can give people a few dollars to come garden. And some people in my building have said, you don't even need it. I'll do it for free. And I can turn that back over into getting more seeds or whatever. Or more plants, or turn it over into getting some recycling bins, because we don't have recycling bins here at my building. But the challenge is going to be how effectively and respectfully and how we can really get the community to embrace what we're doing and be leaders into making what we're trying to do carry on, and get some of that trust back, and like I said, make it spread all over the city. I don't know if that's what
Yeah,
if
you
that's
totally got it.
understandable. I mean,
Yeah, because it's 12:45, we're probably ready for questions.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go with the last two slides in just
Okay.
2 minutes, and then we're gonna open it up for questions. We know we're a couple minutes behind. It's a pretty long process, but we felt like all these slides are important to talk about. So the next one is just like who can be involved, how and when. So really, we have a couple of things, but you yourself, like organizations like your own, but the people that make up the organization and your connection networks are what is really important for us to achieve C4's mission, and really honor those values, these community agreements, and the leadership team governments. So we know that this work cannot be done without all of your guys's creativity, like visions, all your leadership as well. And those are the people that because we are all impacted by climate justice at different levels, with communities of color, by BIPOC communities being the most impacted. And so we have all these different people that are involved, and all the people that we need to really meet our goals. And another thing is that we just had our kickoff. Jace was able to go there. Some of y'all might have been there as well. We had folks from all across, but we really wanted to make it like inclusive and equitable for folks to attend. So some of our ambassadors thought about having childcare, so we were able to have some folks there. We wanted to make it intentional, like how do we capture people's climate stories and things that matter to them. So at our tables, we have like these posters where ambassadors would kind of write down what their table was saying that really mattered to them and impacted them the most. And then the other one is kind of like, you'll see some of our leadership team all the way to the right side. These are folks that helped co-organize this along with C4 ambassadors and other organizations to make it possible. So that was like an event that folks could have participated in or have participated in. And there's going to be much more like that throughout the summer and just coming up as well. And then kind of the last slide is for this group specifically, like around some ideas. So Journey shared these ambassador contacts, connect with your neighbors, you can canvas, really gather some survey. I know the CAP, I forgot what it stands for, will be gathering that survey. We also need we need to help ideate and reimagine what our communities look like to really address climate justice, collecting climate stories. So Jay shared our website, but on there we have like an idea where you can commit to sharing your story and what that means. Like, it's important for people to know our narratives and the things we've gone through and our hopes for how we'd like to see change. Amplifying our engagement. So by y'all just like having us be part of this conversation, it's already kind of amplified who we are. And we hope to reach even more people to get involved. Some of y'all might be in Kalamazoo, but that doesn't mean that you can't support or provide some sort of allyship to the work that's happening, or even try to replicate C4 in your own city as well. And another one is just like following us on social media. So kind of keeping in touch with things that are happening, where we're showing up, like news networks where we're at, posting like neighborhood town halls, or how do you gather some of your friends in your living room and all kind of like plan how you want to create some sort of change. So there's a lot of things. And then right here, we have one of our ambassadors kind of sharing out what their table have said during that event. Also, sorry in advance, I didn't realize my background noise is super loud. So if there's anything I have questions on or things like that, I apologize. I thought it was a little quieter. But I'll be moving on to the Q&A, and we also want to appreciate you for the time that you took to go through this presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And we have about 12 minutes for question and answer. So if you'd like to raise your hand either on your video so I can see it, or on by clicking the raise your hand button, we can call on folks, and the ambassadors can answer questions. So who would like to ask a question? All right. Jeff, would you like to go first? And then we've got Nikki and Tim.
Hi, thanks for all the great work and for sharing all the details. It got me thinking about Kalamazoo's got pretty well-defined neighborhoods and existing neighborhood organizations. And I wonder if the C4 ambassadors are parts of their own sort of sub-neighborhood organizations, or sort of separate from them. Is it, or does it vary a lot? How do you relate your work so far to any existing neighborhood orgs? Thanks.
We haven't had to work with them so far, but we're willing to work with them in any way that we need to in order to get things done. We just started a project with the Boston Square Church, and they don't have to work with a housing agent, or I mean, you know what I mean. I know what you meant. So, but they don't have to work with that. They just have to work with their congregation, and we pretty much agreed to do whatever they wanted. So it should be a beautiful space once we're done with it. Putting a pocket forest in. But we haven't run into that yet, but I'm sure that we're going to. And I just think we're gonna have to buckle down and write out an agreement, and probably gonna have to abide by their rules. And they're gonna probably have a hard time getting rid of their Kentucky bluegrass.
And I think like when we do our projects, it'll be in our areas, like the neighborhoods we live in.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Hope Network owns my building. I'm almost I can almost guarantee I'm gonna get an argument.
All right, thanks.
No
And
problem.
do you all have a relationship, I think, with the Boston Square Neighborhood Association? I think, for
Yes.
example, you have meetings in their space. So that's
Yeah.
a great partnership there.
Yeah.
Anything else to add on this point? Otherwise, we can move on to Nikki.
Yeah, I got confused about the structure of the organization. Like, how do you find your ambassadors? And then you're saying that they get some money for projects. So I take it back in 2022, you were doing grant writing. Is that where the money came for the ambassadors? It's the logistics of how the organization is working. I guess that confused me.
there's the leadership team, and they did fundraising. They did partial private fundraising and partial public, I believe. I don't quote me on this because I'm not the person that quote. I wish Ned was here to tell you all this because he knows it all. The leadership team, and Ned, mostly Ned went out and found all of us ambassadors. And he said, if you come on as an ambassador, I can pay you, at the time it was, I can pay you for 10 hours a month for working. On any research you have to do, any people you have to talk to, I can pay you that much. And then as time went on, we had more than 10 hours. So then he was like, okay, I can pay you up to 20. And then it changed from there, but I mean, it's changing all the time. And then as money runs out, we'll have to find something different, or we'll have to raise more money. And then there's grants that they give mini grants to the ambassadors to work on their projects.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
the grants are different, okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think you described it really well, Ryan. I think another thing is like we were funded by the Waygate Foundation, Consumers Energy, and a couple of other sponsors. We have a variety of sponsors. We're not directly working with the city, but we do provide, for example, through our own networks and like the canvassing and connections that we do with neighbors, we would inform some of their initiatives around climate justice initiatives. So that's like another thing. And so each ambassador has about 5,000 to invest in a really local project, but we don't, like, the ambassadors don't lead that completely. We really just focused, we want to survey our neighbors and communities and be like, what matters and what do we need and how can we fund this project? And so throughout the summer, that's and throughout the rest of this year, that's what we're doing. And an example of that is the pocket forest that's happening at that church, as like where that money is being invested. And the ambassadors were chosen like first come, first serve, essentially. People are learning, we're seeing what identities we still need to have represented in this group, like who was missing, what voice needs to be further amplified. So I think right now we're still in the future going to open up to a third cohort. But the ones that we have right now, like we're specifically selected for just different identities that need to be brought to the table and have a voice within these initiatives.
Okay.
And then
okay.
we're all independent contractors. So we're not employed, but rather like it's on our own time that we find time to connect with folks and do some of this work.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else want to add anything to that question? Oh, Felicia, are you talking? We can't hear you. I think you're still muted.
There.
Oh, there
no.
we go. Ahead.
Yeah, my friend Sini, she's on the leadership board, and I go there and get my hair done, and we often talk about things, you know, like with climate and stuff like that. So that's how she got me into it, because I had the same interest as she did, and so then she asked me about it. So a lot of times it was like running into people and talking with them, figuring out what their interests are and how they're interested in the climate change, and that's how I think some of us got into it.
Great, thanks for sharing. Okay, why don't we move on to Tim's question?
Excuse me. Okay, so as part of the Climate Emergency Month here in Kalamazoo, we have a large number of events, including one of our groups called Hope for Creation has put on a series of discussions about a book called The Intersectional Environmentalist. And it provides an excellent framework about including marginalized groups in environmental concerns. So first of all, I wonder if any of you have heard of that book, and I will put it in the chat so you can see the title. Anyway, I would recommend it if you're looking for a resource of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Do any of the ambassadors have any comments on this book? Have you checked it out yet?
Sounds interesting.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim. And it looks like Jeff has another question, but does anybody else want to ask a question first before we're getting a little close to the end here? Okay, well, if nobody else has a question, we can have Jeff ask one, and then maybe we'll have time for one more after that. We'll see. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jace. I wonder if you have a similar municipal program. There's something happening in Kalamazoo with what they call neighborhood activators. So there's city staff members. They might be grant funded. I wonder if you've seen similar layouts in Grand Rapids, and if that's a model that works, or is that a model that is more, I don't know, I see it maybe more top down compared to like the bottom up neighborhood ambassadors. I really like what you guys are trying and doing compared to sort of the city names an activator, it sends them into a neighborhood instead of a neighborhood resident emerging from the neighborhood to lead. Just wonder if that's something
Right.
in Grand Rapids.
I haven't heard of anything like that, but I hadn't heard of anything like this before I joined it. So they could have something like that here, and it's just stagnating or something, and just as it gotten the publicity that it deserves. I don't know.
I think
That's something to look into, though. I'll look into it.
Thanks, Ryan.
I'll
I
look
think
into it.
I'd be interested in knowing if you have a municipal program that does that too. And you said that neighborhood activators are people that work for the city in different capacities.
Yeah, the two I've interacted with seem like employees. They seem like they're on sort of short-term one-time funding. So it's probably one of those like, we'll try this. But yeah, I'll look it up and share it in the chat if I can real fast. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think something that's important to know for our work is that we want to dismantle extractive extractive systems, and sometimes to hold the city accountable when you work for them, it can get a little bit complicated in terms of what that accountability looks like. So what we really want to empower is more of a grassroots approach to some extent. So it's about having like people that vote for you, or that do some sort of like that can hold you accountable for leading some of this change. And so I think that's why we do have someone that works for the city be part of this conversation, because we still need that communications to kind of report like what the community is saying, like how that can be implemented into like policy or other initiatives. But I think something that's really unique about this is that it is really centered on BIPOC leadership and enabling that with the right resources, networks, and funding. So like ambassadors are paid and they have like funds to implement this project. But yeah, I would say that I'd be interested in like learning more about that. And about that model, again, something that we're kind of moving away from is not having people that just do city and doing these advisory boards, but how do we get people that are experienced and that don't have any sort of stake to some extent working for the city or something like that, because then it gets more complicated on strategy and stuff.
Yeah, thanks. I did just share one in the chat, and thanks for the time and the questions. Jace, back to you.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you so much to our presenters with the Grand Rapids Community Collaboration on Climate Change. Really appreciated all the information, and we can share out this recording for those who weren't able to attend later.